Okay, what's up, everybody? It is 8:30. It is the 26th day of July, 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OG content warning. There's going to be some sarcasm, well, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of theory crafting, and some possibly not nice things said about Jeremy Crawford and Wizards of the Coast in this vlog. So if me talking about Wizards of the Coast in a less than positive fashion is something that upsets you, please stop watching now. I'll give you a minute. Thank you, Disney Plus and Marvel and the MCU, for this wonderful picture of the sacred timeline from Loki. If you haven't watched Loki yet on MCU, I'm going to be referring to the sacred timeline a few times. So, spoilers. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Jeremy Crawford's announcement that nothing that happened before 2014 is canon, and everything that happened after 2014 is canon in regards to Dungeons and Dragons. Which brings up the question, if nothing that happened before 2014 is canon, is it still D&D? Of course it's still D&D. Dungeons and Dragons is a rule set. It's not anything else. And nobody plays it the same way at their table. So even if you have two groups running the exact same adventure at the exact same time in the exact same place, it'll be two completely different experiences because nobody plays the game the same way. Dungeons and Dragons is just a word and a rule set. Wizards of the Coast owns the word Dungeons and Dragons. They can put the word Dungeons and Dragons on anything they want. If you're playing Wizards of the Coast IP property, like 5th edition D&D or 4th edition D&D or 3rd edition D&D, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. So yes, no matter what anybody thinks, even if anything besides 2014 never happened and is no longer canon, it's still D&D. The D&D rule set is not affected by Crawford's stupid announcement. The Forgoten Realms, on the other hand, is hugely affected, to the point where I don't think Crawford understands exactly what he's talking about. Because there's a lot of stuff that happened in the sacred timeline of the Forgotten Realms before 2014 that has huge implications on the Forgotten Realms today. And if those events are no longer canon, that means they didn't happen, and the environment of the Forgotten Realms along its sacred timeline is changed. And I'm not sure Crawford understands the meaning of the word canon as opposed to lore, as opposed to fact, because canon means it happened, and nothing you can do can change it. It's Uncle Ben dying is canon in the MCU. No ifs, ands, or buts. Uncle Ben always has to die. Doesn't matter how else the MCU is rewritten, how many times it's restarted, how many alternate universes there are, Uncle Ben dying is canon. It cannot be changed. It happened. Nothing you do can change it. It is a fixed point in time along the sacred timeline of Marvel. Same thing with this. Canon in Forgotten Realms lore, Mr. Crawford, means it happened. And nothing anybody can do changes it. They are fixed points in time. So, if nothing before 2014 matters, never happened, that's a lot of major events in the history of the Forgotten Realms that never happened. Of course, one of the hugest events in the history of the Forgotten Realms, the Time of Troubles, the Avatar trilogy, Midnight, Cyric, Kalimvor, all that nonsense. The gods being thrown out of the heavens because Ao, the one above all, felt they weren't doing their jobs, and they had to go through tests to prove they were worthy to get their godhood back, and certain gods were replaced and killed or re-evolved. That never happened, which totally changes the environment and the outlook of current Forgotten Realms lore. Certain gods now don't exist, and certain gods that didn't exist are now back. And certain events that are majorly important to Mystra becoming Midnight, becoming Mystara, never happened. The Spell Plague never happened. Dead and Thay never happened. No modules or adventures or novels or video games that relate to Forgotten Realms lore / canon happened. Curse of the Azure Bonds never happened. The Bloodstone Wars never happened. That's huge. And most importantly, Drizzt never left the Underdark because that was written before 2014, which means Drizzt never happened. But by the 100% taking him at his words definition of the word canon, every module and video game that has come out after 2014 has happened. It is 100% canon, and nothing anybody did changed the outcome of those events. They are all fixed points in time in the sacred timeline, #TVAs, #Loki, of the Forgotten Realms. So let's just think about that. Every module, every video game, everything that has been written since 2014 happened the way it's written, and nothing anybody did changed the outcome. That's huge. That is monumentally, to the point of the Forgotten Realms has faced multiple apocalypses, huge. And if you take that as the word and you take that as the most sarcastic, hard sell definition of canon, well then, yeah, by my abject, pointless calculation, which means absolutely nothing, as of today in Forgotten Realms lore history, this moment in time, 90% of the Forgotten Realms population is dead. And the Forgotten Realms is more of a post-apocalyptic wasteland where people don't have time to adventure because they're barely surviving, scraping off the carcass of a dying planet. Because you understand, just by 3 events alone actually happening the way, well, there's multiple events, but let's look at that happened the way they are written and nothing anybody did change them. Well, that's huge. That's devastating. I mean, let's look at the biggies. Okay, Princes of the Apocalypse happened. Nothing changed the outcome of Princes of the Apocalypse. The evil elemental overlord princes were free to bring about the apocalypse. Tomb of Annihilation happened. Nothing anybody did changed it. That means the death curse happened. And all those people who died stayed dead. Nobody could ever be reincarnated or resurrected again. Akarak got access to that fledgling god, killing hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people across the Forgotten Realms are dead because of the Tomb of Annihilation events. Avernus happened. Nothing anybody did changed the outcome of Avernus. A huge, gaping hell maw has appeared where Baldur's Gate used to be. Millions of people are dead. Huge chunks of land thrown into hell. We have a gigantic hell gate opening up, splurring out lava and hell things and turning it into a Mad Max-X landscape. Okay, Storm King's Thunder happened. A huge war between the giants and the people of the Forgotten Realms happened. And there's this mad storm giant flying around on his sky-based magic battleship, wielding destruction everywhere he goes across the Forgotten Realms, and nobody stopped him. Rime of the Frost Maiden happened, which means the 10 towns and everything north of Neverwinter gone, because nobody stopped it. Curse of the Mad Mage happened, which means people of Waterdeep suddenly are aware there's a huge giant dungeon underneath their city, because remember, Undermountain was written before 2014, which means Undermountain didn't exist until Dragon Heist and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And all these monsters that are in Undermountain are suddenly coming out. The gates have been opened. Hallister isn't doing anything, All these important individuals are dead in the Forgotten Realms. Xanther has successfully taken over the multiple guilds and taken over the massless lords of Waterdeep and replaced himself as the Lord of Waterdeep. Waterdeep is now a monster-infested, gang warfare, post-apocalypse city ruled over by an insane beholder. If every module that is written, every adventure, every video game that has been written since 2014 is 100% canon, Mr. Crawford, as is, it is set in stone along the sacred Forgotten Realms timeline, and nothing anybody did changed it, well, that's huge. That's huge. That's dramatic changes for the history, lore, and just the everyday life of the Forgotten Realms, because all the important events before 2014, like the Time of Troubles and the Spell Plague and the Bloodstone War, never happened. But all these events after 2014 have happened, and by the ultimate sarcastic, taking it on its word definition of canon, nothing anybody did changed the outcome. So think about that. Just think of all those modules, all those video games, all those books, everything that's been written since 2014 happened, and nothing anybody did changed it. The Forgotten Realms is a post-apocalypse wasteland, teetering on the brink of final death. I don't know if anybody would want to play that world, but by your definition, by canon, Mr. Crawford, that's what happened. Which means if I ever run 5th edition D&D again in the Forgotten Realms, I'm going to run it as if everything from 2014 is canon. Happened, nobody stopped it. So my Forgotten Realms is going to look a lot more like Mork Borg, Midnight, Thunder the Barbarian, Ultraviolet Grasslands. I mean, there won't really be clerics because, gods are pretty much gone. I guess warlocks will be mostly just, empowered by the devil because of Avernus. Magic is pretty much gone. I mean, because Midnight never took Mystra's place. It's going to be more like just running a grim, dark, post-apocalyptic fantasy campaign where people are just playing characters who are just trying to scrape by on the carcass of this dying world. I don't know if anybody would want to play that once they found out, but if anybody says anything about it, I can just say, oh, I'm sorry, it's canon. Jeremy Crawford said so. So, yeah, the death plague happened. Your beloved character died and never came back because there was no more reincarnation or resurrection. Yeah, people stay dead now. Sucks, I know. Yeah, that city you love, Neverwinter, gone. Waterdeep, gone. Baldur's Gate, gone. Everything below this mark, gone. You still want to play? I'm your grumpy guide to all things gaming. If you appreciate my sarcasm, let me know. If you think I should shut up, let me know. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Until then, keep the sacred timeline safe, support your local TVA, and I will talk to you later.